Newfoundland and Labrador appears first as coastline. Steep cliffs, narrow harbors, and small settlements facing the North Atlantic. In places like St. John's, colorful houses climb the hills above the water, while fishing boats and offshore vessels still shape daily movement. What stands out immediately is how closely life and landscape remain connected, even in the province's largest city. As a travel destination, Newfoundland and Labrador is defined by distance, weather, and scale. Tourism here is built around coastal towns, long drives, and national parks rather than dense urban routes. The Avalon Peninsula introduces this pattern early, with historic communities, rugged shorelines, and frequent access to the open ocean. Farther along the coast, places such as Bonavista and Twillingate reflect a slower rhythm shaped by fishing traditions and seasonal travel. Fogo Island adds a more contemporary layer, combining modern design with an isolated island setting. Inland, Gros Morne National Park shifts the focus toward mountains, fjords, and exposed geological formations, while Iceberg Alley brings a seasonal element that influences when and how the coast is visited. Geographically, the province is divided into two distinct parts. Newfoundland forms the island portion, containing most population centers and visitor routes, while Labrador lies on the mainland, extending north into more remote and sparsely populated regions. This division helps explain the contrasts in travel experience, from accessible coastal drives to long-distance northern routes. This geography is also reflected in the province's history within Canada. Newfoundland and Labrador was the last province to join Confederation, entering Canada in 1949 under the name Newfoundland. Although Labrador was governed alongside the island, the broader identity became official only much later. In 2001, a constitutional amendment formally established Newfoundland and Labrador as the province's name, aligning its political identity with its geographic reality. With that broader context in place, the focus now shifts closer. Each of these locations reveals a different side of how tourism functions across Newfoundland and Labrador, shaped by landscape, access, and distance. St. John's is the capital and largest city of Newfoundland and Labrador, and for many visitors it becomes the main point of entry into the province. The city is built around a natural harbor, one of the most sheltered on the Atlantic coast, which has shaped its role for centuries. Today, this geography still defines movement through the city, from the working waterfront to the steep streets that rise above the port. Tourism in St. John's blends urban access with immediate exposure to the ocean, where coastal trails, historic districts, and active harbors exist within a compact area. Much of the city's appeal comes from this overlap. Historic neighborhoods sit close to modern infrastructure, while fishing boats, offshore supply vessels, and cruise ships share the same waters. Signal Hill and the surrounding headlands provide clear vantage points over the Atlantic, offering context for the city's long connection to maritime travel and trade. Cultural institutions, local music venues, and a growing food scene add depth, but the landscape remains central. Even within the city limits, the environment feels exposed to wind, fog, and changing light, reinforcing a sense of being directly on the edge of the continent. St. John's is also the gateway to the Avalon Peninsula, the southeastern tip of Newfoundland, and one of the most accessible regions for travelers. The peninsula concentrates a large share of the province's population and historic settlements, connected by short drives and coastal roads. Tourism here focuses on lighthouses, small fishing communities and dramatic shorelines where land meets open ocean. Because distances are relatively short, the Avalon Peninsula often serves as an introduction to Newfoundland's broader travel patterns: coastal exploration, changing weather, and landscapes shaped by the Atlantic. Leaving the Avalon Peninsula, the route continues north and east along the coast, where distances increase and settlements feel more directly shaped by ocean conditions. Short loops give way to longer coastal drives, and travel becomes less about proximity and more about timing. This shift is clear in Bonavista, where landscape and history are closely intertwined. Bonavista sits on a narrow peninsula extending into the Atlantic, and is often associated with some of the earliest European presence in the region. Tourism here centers on coastal headlands, historic structures, and nearby fishing communities rather than a dense town core. Visitors tend to move between cliffs, coves, and viewpoints, using Bonavista as a base for exploring the surrounding coastline. The pace is measured, shaped by weather and light rather than a fixed schedule. Continuing farther north, the coastline opens even more, and tourism becomes increasingly tied to natural cycles. This transition leads into Twillingate, where geography places the ocean at the center of nearly every experience. Twillingate is spread across small islands connected by bridges, with constant exposure to the North Atlantic. The town is closely associated with Iceberg Alley, a stretch of coastline where icebergs drift south from Arctic waters during late spring and early summer. Their appearance offshore is unpredictable, and this uncertainty plays a central role in how tourism functions in the area. As a result, tourism in Twillingate is strongly seasonal. Visitor numbers rise and fall with iceberg activity, wildlife movement, and weather conditions. Boat tours and coastal viewpoints are timed around visibility and sea conditions, while whale watching becomes another seasonal draw, particularly during the warmer months when feeding routes pass close to shore. Rather than offering a year-round uniform experience, Twillingate reflects a pattern seen across much of Newfoundland and Labrador, where travel is shaped less by infrastructure and more by natural rhythms along the coast. From Twillingate, the route continues offshore, toward a place where isolation itself becomes part of the travel experience. Fogo Island lies off Newfoundland's northeastern coast and is reached by ferry rather than road. Tourism here is shaped by separation, with travel planned around crossings, weather, and limited infrastructure. The island is made up of small communities scattered along a rocky shoreline, where fishing stages, coves, and exposed headlands dominate the landscape. In recent years, Fogo Island has gained attention for blending contemporary architecture with traditional settlement patterns, creating a form of tourism that emphasizes place, scale, and continuity rather than volume. Visitors tend to stay longer, moving slowly between communities and coastal viewpoints rather than covering distance. From the coast, the focus then shifts inland, where Newfoundland's landscape changes dramatically. Gros Morne National Park represents one of the province's most distinct natural environments. The park is defined by mountains, fjords, glacial valleys, and exposed geological formations that reveal deep layers of the Earth's structure. Tourism here centers on hiking, scenic drives, and boat tours that move through long, narrow inlets carved by ice. Unlike the coastal towns, Gros Morne draws visitors away from the ocean and into interior terrain, offering a different rhythm of travel shaped by elevation, distance, and weather conditions. Together with the surrounding communities, the park forms a core part of how Newfoundland's interior landscape is experienced by visitors. As the journey moves toward its end, leaving Labrador out would leave the picture incomplete. Although tourism there is limited in scale, Labrador remains an essential part of the province's identity. Vast distances, sparse road networks, and a harsher climate mean travel here is slower and more deliberate. Communities are fewer and farther apart, and access often depends on seasonal routes. Rather than functioning as a conventional tourist circuit, Labrador represents the outer edge of travel in Newfoundland, where landscape outweighs infrastructure and isolation becomes a defining feature. One of the most notable locations in Labrador is Red Bay, recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Red Bay preserves the remains of a 16th-century Basque whaling station, offering rare insight into early transatlantic activity in North America. Today, tourism here is focused on interpretation rather than volume, with archaeological sites and coastal waters telling a story of seasonal industry, long-distance navigation, and early European presence. Its designation highlights how Labrador's tourism value often lies in historical depth rather than accessibility. Taken together, Newfoundland and Labrador presents a travel experience shaped by geography more than convenience. From the urban harbor of St. John's to the coastal towns of Bonavista and Twillingate, from the offshore isolation of Fogo Island to the interior landscapes of Gros Morne, and finally to the vast mainland of Labrador, tourism here follows natural boundaries. Distance, weather, and seasonal rhythms influence how places are visited and when they make sense to explore. If this overview helped clarify how travel works across Newfoundland and Labrador, consider giving the video a like. And for more documentary-style travel films focused on places and how they are experienced, subscribe to the channel.